people who want to push an agenda, people who may be anti-oil and gas from other places, say, hey, let's go to Colorado. If we can shut down oil and gas in Colorado, we can shut down, we could really have a ripple effect here. And so I think, one, all Coloradoans should be concerned and skeptical of what's the agenda? Who's funding these 3 ballot initiatives? And I think when you follow the money in politics, which you do, you'll find out some interesting answers to those, that primarily it's out-of-state money. It's being driven by people with certain political motives. And I don't think it's geared towards the best interest of Colorado or Colorado's future. A lot of the folks that are pushing this really don't care about the economic consequences. They'll be honest with you. They'll say, well, I really don't care how many jobs are at stake. I care that somebody's going to lose a job out there that supports family. Those of us in Colorado have to come to the realization that Colorado really, over the years, has kind of become the place to go to fight whatever battle you want to fight. And so people, because of our low threshold in terms of signatures to get things on the ballot, and because we're a relatively small state, you can use a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of money to move the public. It's just like tax policy. When we enact certain tax policies, which some states have done, guess what happens? Businesses leave, jobs leave. And you don't have to go back far in Colorado to understand that. We had this battle back in 2008, about 8 years ago, on a series of competing ballot initiatives. And people left the state. The rigs went to Utah. They went to Texas, Oklahoma. We're not our own little universe here. But let me tell you what oil and gas has done, particularly over the last, since I became elected as county commissioner. I'll speak to it in that frame. In 2009, when I walked into this office, the unemployment rate in Will County was 11.5%. We were in an economic depression. The first thing I had to do as county commissioner was reduce our overall county budget by $20 million out of a budget at that time of about $200 million. So about a 10% cut. And when I talk about that's real dollars. That's not you cut the rate of increase. That was a real dollar for dollar cut in terms of that. We worked our way through 2009. It was a very challenging year. And then in 2010, as I told you, we got the news of what we now know as the Niobrara in North Will County. Since that time, in 2010, our assessed value in the county has gone from $5.5 billion to $11.1 billion. Our unemployment rate has dropped from 11.5% to about 3%. It's about 3.1%. We have been in the top 5 counties in the nation, not just in Colorado, in the nation in wage growth. I would hope that those that make inflammatory statements are held to the same standard that the industry. That's all. Let's hold them both accountable. If somebody gets up and says this causes you cancer, if somebody says this air isn't fit to breathe, if somebody says when you're on a municipal water system that goes through filters, that fracking is going to contaminate your water, that goes through a wastewater treatment, I mean, really. And so I think there are legitimate concerns about there in terms of traffic, in terms of this industrial process, which it clearly is, and how we can improve upon it and lessen the impacts in terms of that. But let's have that in the greater context about what the real concerns are versus the red herrings that somehow get brought into this debate. There was this struggle between agriculture and the oil and gas industry. And there were competing interests. And it played itself out in a series of legislative sessions in 1990, 91, into 92. And the agricultural interests, Farm Bureau, corn growers, wheat growers, stock growers would all go down the legislature and say, we need reforms. They'd introduce a bill, the oil and gas industry would oppose the bill, then the oil and gas industry would introduce a bill, and the ag industry, and it was just a big fight. And a couple of people stood up and basically said, we can keep fighting this, we can keep arguing this, but why don't we sit down and see where, I call it the 80-20 rule. the 80% that we can agree on and the 20%, let's focus on the 80% and then let's address the 20%. People, if they understand that they benefit both directly and indirectly from this process, I think they understand they're more willing to maybe put up with some things and experience those inconveniences. And essentially what happened was individuals willing to sit down and address their individual concerns. The oil and gas industry had their concerns, and the ag industry had their concerns. And at the end of the day, the challenge was, can we come to an accommodation? And over the last 2 decades, that accommodation, that peace treaty, whatever you want to call, has led to the greatest alliance in the state when it comes to ag supporting oil and gas supporting ag. And it's built on respect. If our farmers and ranchers and the industry can sit down and come to an accommodation like they did in the early 90s, I have great hope. I have great optimism that municipalities and other counties can come to an accommodation. Now, there's always going to be a segment of the population which says never, no how, I just don't want it. Well, that's fine. They're entitled to their opinion. I understand and I appreciate it. People have legitimate questions. They have legitimate concerns that deserve answers. And those of us who serve in elected office have a responsibility to try to answer their questions and be transparent in terms of what we know.